friends, it's Father Jay. I'm happy to join you today from the church here at Calvary as we enter into the second week of Advent. We've had 2 Sundays in Advent so far, and we have 2 more Sundays before we arrive at Christmas. So we're in the second week. And this Wednesday night, we'll have our second food and formation opportunity. That will be totally on Zoom, and we are going to continue to discuss Archbishop Rowan Williams' book, Writing in the Dust, which is a book about reconciling in the time after September the 11th, and looking at that moment as a touchstone for our own moment and how we can think about reconciliation today. We did have an Advent retreat this past weekend, which was both in person and online, and I was happy to hear how successful that was, and want to thank everyone, particularly Mother Nan and the Baileys for their leadership of that event, but I want to thank everybody for their participation. So I look forward to future events along those lines. I wanted to talk today about a couple of the traditions surrounding Advent. We, of course, have the nativity scene, which Mother Nan is walking us through, ostensibly posting things for children, but they're really also for all of us, focused on young people, but they have something to teach all of us in terms of the symbolism of the nativity scene and as the pieces are added along the way. We also have this Advent wreath, which helps us mark time in Advent, starting with the blue candles that we lit on the first and second Sundays of Advent, blue being the color that we use here at Calvary to represent this season. There will be a candle in the middle at Christmas to celebrate the Nativity of Christ. That candle will be white. But then there's this candle. Some people might call it pink. Technically, the color is rose. This candle, which will be lit this coming Sunday, the third Sunday of Advent, is lit in honor of Mary, the mother of Jesus. In the Orthodox Church and in the Orthodox tradition, her title is Theotokos. She is the bearer of God into the world and occupies a very special place and reminds us that God's work in the world, God is all-powerful. God can do whatever God wills, but part of what God hopes is that we will join in the work of making and restoring this world. And Mary, before anyone else, is symbolic of that cooperation with God in her saying yes to the work of bringing Jesus into the world at the Annunciation. And so we celebrate and we remember Mary this Sunday for her faithful response and for her model to us of what a faithful response looks like. Many people throughout the world also look to Mary as representative of the hope, of the comfort, of the promise of restoration, of nurture that God makes to us. There are several traditions surrounding Mary. One is Our Lady of Walsingham in England. Our Lady of Walsingham is a tradition and an account of the appearance of Mary to a noble woman in the town of Walsingham in England in the 11th century. And there grew up at that place a tradition of healing, a tradition of veneration, a tradition of pilgrimage there. So Our Lady of Walsingham and Walsingham have been significant places in English Christianity for over a millennium now, or almost a millennium now. And we actually have an image of Our Lady of Walsingham in the chapel here at Calvary. So if you are curious about that tradition, you can see an image there. Another way Mary is remembered, actually this year, falls on the Saturday before the third Sunday of Advent. On December the 12th, Christians, particularly in Mexico and Latin America, remember Our Lady of Guadalupe. You may be familiar with images of Our Lady of Guadalupe, the sun radiating out behind her wearing a sky-colored or cerulean gown that's filled with stars, and roses at her feet. That is a tradition that comes out of Mexico and out of Mexico City, where in the 16th century there was a peasant named Juan Diego who, on traveling from his home to the city, passed over a hill where he saw a vision of Mary. And Mary asked him to build a church there in her honor. So after a couple of these encounters, he went to the archbishop of that area and asked him what he should do if he should build a church. The archbishop said, well, he liked Juan Diego fine. He wasn't willing to just rest on his testimony alone. Juan Diego should ask for a sign from Mary. So the next time Juan Diego encountered Mary, he asked, and she said, fine, meet me here on December the 11th, which would have been the next day, and I'll give you a sign. And so he agreed and planned to do that. But then he went home, Juan Diego went home and found that his uncle was ill. And he decided that it was more important for him to tend to his uncle's care than to keep his appointment with Mary. And so that's what he did. And unfortunately, throughout the day, his uncle took a turn for the worse and got very ill. So Juan Diego decided the time had come to find a priest so the priest could come and minister to his uncle at the time of his death. Now, on his way, he would have had to pass over that hill where he had first encountered Mary. But because he was so embarrassed at having stood her up, he decided to take a different route around the hill. Still, Mary appeared to him, and she asked him why he had not come to meet her, as they had agreed. And he told her the whole story. He told her about his uncle. He told her about how he was now going to seek out a priest that could care for his uncle at the time of his death. And Mary spoke to him. Mary spoke to him in his native language, in Nahuatl, and said to him, "Don't you know that I am your mother? I am here to care for you." She spoke words representing the nurture and care of God for God's world. And she went on to tell him that his uncle had been cured His uncle was fine. His uncle was recovering even as they spoke, and that Juan Diego should go up on this hill and retrieve or pick the flowers that were blooming there and take them to the Archbishop as a sign. So Juan Diego did what he was told. He went up on the top of the hill, and there he found in full bloom Castilian roses, which are not native to Mexico and which should not be blooming on December the 12th. But there they were anyway. So he picked them and he wrapped them up in his cloak, and he took them to the Archbishop. And when he opened the cloak and these flowers spilled out at the Archbishop's feet, on the cloak was this vision, was this image of Our Lady of Guadalupe that had been imprinted on the cloak. And so that cloak to this day is kept in the Church of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Many people make a pilgrimage there, just as they made a pilgrimage to Walsingham in England. And they venerate the Lady of Guadalupe, veneration being praying with rather than praying to. And so it is a little coincidental that the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe falls so close to the third Sunday of Advent this year, but it is another reminder of the traditions of Mary throughout the world and how we celebrate them and how we recognize them. And if you have the opportunity this Saturday, and if you know where you can find some, and if you find out, please let me know, the traditional food for the celebration of the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe are tamales. So if you find a good tamale source, please let me know, because I would like to have some too. And between now and then, and in the days to come, I pray that God will bless you and keep you, that God's face will shine upon you and give you peace. Amen.